it's easy as Agile Heretic to spend my time ranting against things that I don't like about how Agile has been implemented or popularized. I thought it was probably important to start with a not so brief video that talks about what I see to be the soul of Agile, the reason that Agile exists, and frankly, the reason I'm spending time, making these videos because, I don't have to. But this is important stuff. Software development is largely controlling every action that human beings take now in their automobiles, at home, in flight, regardless of what they're doing. Software is touching them now. That's a big responsibility. It is super important. And so Agile in the 90s was originally conceived to get people to communicate. So communication is the first element of the soul of Agile for me. And at that time, not to be too blunt about it, but software developers were usually seen as a bunch of Jolt Cola drinking, Cheeto eating people in a basement with zero social skills. And the rest of the world was like saying, can you do this? And they were saying something back. And then they'd say something back and they'd get frustrated because the rest of the people couldn't figure out what they were saying. Agile was invented to solve that key problem. How do you get internally the team to communicate, but then also how do you get the team to communicate out to the customers, to the people actually receiving the value, and vice versa, right? So communication, number one. Number two, understanding. Do we understand our work? Do we understand our clients? Do we understand each other? Do we understand our tools? Do we understand our process? Do we have the understanding as a group, as a software development team that includes the whole company, right? Do we understand the nature of our work, what we're supposed to do every day, how much work we can handle? Do we actually understand our context? Agile should be about understanding your context. Sustainable pace, term bandied around a lot in Agile. In order to have sustainable pace, you need to actually understand the work that you are doing. So there's that word understanding again. You need to be able to promise something to people at a time where you can deliver it and still go home at 5 o'clock. Now, this was seen as a problem way back in the day, back around 97, 98, because software development people just didn't go home. IT people just didn't go home. And at the time, we were all, 22 years old. So we didn't have homes to go home to, so it didn't matter so much. But after a while, we did. We suddenly had families and, maybe just from time to time wanted to do something other than type. So we need to actually understand our pace in order to have a sustainable pace. And we have not been very good at figuring that out. If you go through any of Kent Beck's books, you'll have this one here, responding to change. That we're always trying to reduce the cost of change. But what we're doing is we're responding, and we're responding to changes in our team, in our understanding of the tools that we're employing, in our understanding of the problem domain, in our understanding of the solution space, in our understanding of how we treat bugs versus features, how we prioritize or deprioritize certain work. All of these things, the market itself, all of these things change constantly while we're working, and we need to respond to change. An Agile team is able to respond to change. And we'll talk a lot about that because it's important. Writing clean code, number 5. I'm frustrated that it is 2018 and I'm talking about clean code. That's just completely unacceptable to me. So part of the problem here is that since we don't have a really good grip on what work we can do easily and what work requires problem solving, we're often blindsided by thinking that we're starting into an easy problem and it turns into something that's much more complex. When that happens, we keep trying to write code like we're still in the same 2-week time box. Massive problem for clean code for me. Clean code for me means that when you are done, someone else can read it and edit it, right? Until you do that, for me, you're not done, okay? Being done with code doesn't mean that you can move the sticky to done or move the sticky to testing. And being done does not mean that it passes all of your tests. Being done means that someone else can read your stuff and edit it. Almost every project I have had or worked with other teams on where they're having a whole bunch of problems, it's due to the fact that there's a ton of spaghetti in their code. So writing clean code, knowing when to do TDD, when not to do TDD, when to pair, when to mob, when to whatever, when to comment. Clean code is respect. If you don't respect being a software developer, if you don't respect your fellow software developers, then you can go on writing crappy code. But if you respect the people that you work with, you'll write something that they can edit. Solving problems. Software development is not about writing code, it is about solving problems and then writing the least amount of code possible to solve that problem. I have no patience for teams that gleefully tell me how many millions of lines of code they've written. That doesn't tell me anything. Telling me how many problems they've solved and preferably how many lines of code they didn't write because they understood what they were doing, that would be Agile for me. So when William Rowden and I hired people for Gray Hill Solutions, we never hired them based on what languages they knew. We hired them based on what problems that they had solved with previous employers. And we never had staffing issues. Never. Because we hired people who solve problems. Building your own process for me is the central tenet of Agile. And it's because when I became involved with Agile, XP barely existed and Scrum wasn't even being discussed. So at that point, we were just discussing everything as something that was Agile, which is why when we came up with Kanban, and then certain people in the Agile community was like, oh, it's heresy. You've gone against iterations and blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, we're doing the Agile thing. We're coming up with better ways to work. And that's all that's ever been. So your process is how you and your team create your stuff. And that might have a relationship to iterations and it might not. It might use user stories and it might not. It might do a whole bunch of stuff and it might not. That's not Scrum, but it's not bad. It's not doing it wrong. It's you building your own process. And so, yeah, we'll talk about that one too. Working with your customer. So the whole point of us having 2-week iterations and regular demos and retrospectives and all of these things isn't to make the team operate better. It's to make the team have a better relationship with the customer. And we lose sight of that all the time. I see inwardly focused Agile all the time. It is painful. Every time you lose contact with your customer for any reason is a time where you know you're going to have rework, you're going to build technical debt, you're going to have pain. So we want to work with our customers, get them in the office as often as we can, be in their space as often as we can, know them. So we're knowing our customers, and number 9, we're knowing our metrics, real knowable metrics, not story points, not Fibonacci weirdness, not hocus pocus velocity, but actually making real measures of real work done in real time and understanding the types of work that we're doing. It's not rocket science. This stuff is actually really easy. The thing that's always thrown us off with this and has made us do the Fibonacci things is that we didn't have a very good relationship with the fact that software development is about problem solving, which in essence is saying When we start any software project, we think we know what we're going to do, but we don't really know. We don't know what we're doing. So we're running experiments, we're writing code, we're seeing how that code works, and every time something works, we build something on top of that. But that is a learning process. It's not a planning process, right? So we need to build metrics that allow us to actually learn and not be thrown away right away. Real-time release. Again, it's 2018. Everybody should grow up and release in real time. I don't care what you're building. In 2007, Grail Solutions, we did real-time release with enterprise scale software. I had no touch to, a web page at all. And if we could do that then, people can do real-time release now. The feedback loops required for real-time release are necessary at the speed at which business currently operates. Inspect and adapt. For me, if we're talking right now about the soul of Agile, this is the core of the soul of Agile is inspect and adapt. And we're not inspecting and adapting our code. We're inspecting and adapting how we work together and how we work with our customers, which means that we are inspecting and adapting our process. Okay. Role definition. I think that people need to know what they should be doing in order to know what they can do. This doesn't mean that people need rigid job descriptions. It means that when you come in the morning and you do your stand-up meeting and we say, okay, today we're going to do this, people go off and do that. And that can change from day to day. Some days I might be a coder, some days I might be a tester, sometimes I might be doing UX, but I'm doing what needs to be done that day. Yes, usually I'll be doing a certain type of work, but again, is it something I'm doing alone, something I'm doing as an assist to somebody else? What is my role right now, and how can I best work with the rest of my team to create value? Planning. My background is as an urban planner. I have literally written plans for 50 years. So in Portland, Oregon, in the early 90s, I helped write the Region 2040 plan. It's a 50-year plan for the region. Do I expect that at the end of 50 years it will look like the plan? No. But was the long-range vision important to make Portland the killer city that it is today? Yeah, it absolutely was. That plan set a lot of policies in motion about how transportation worked, about how people moved from place to place, about how neighborhoods were set up, about how density worked, about how far out suburbs could extend, tons of stuff. When we are planning, we need to create plans that are flexible enough to change as conditions change, but specific enough to give us all the same vision about what we're building. Agile has a tenuous grasp on how to plan currently. Collaboration, number 14. For me, the whole benefit of Agile has been its collaborative nature. It can be more collaborative, certainly. But pair programming, mob programming, these ideas, I've used these around the world with researchers, with scientists, with people producing like furniture, things that have absolutely nothing to do with software development. Collaboration is always an investment that will pay off. So can we look, into so it's a DevOps. Now there's like DevOps groups. What, really? Seriously? A DevOps group? What? DevOps is dev and ops collaborating. The moment that you make a DevOps group, you've completely destroyed the point of DevOps. DevOps is, hey, we used to dev and then we'd throw it over the wall to ops and then we'd watch them flounder. Well, we'd go off and have a party and they'd say, oh man, how do I implement this piece of crap? But now with DevOps, we actually walk over there and we op it with them. And then we say, oh, oops, we wrote a piece of crap. But collaboration, yep, not another group, but actual collaboration. Learning and feedback is number 15, and number 15 is incredibly important. And the major feedback loop of feedback loops were in Agile have been demos, stand-up meetings, and retrospectives. We're going to talk about enhancing those three things and then also kind of blowing them up. So number 16, living in the real world. Software developers and software teams need to know their customers. You need to live in the real world. You need to have conversations regularly with the people who use your stuff, with the people who benefit from your stuff, and dare I say it, the people who suffer from your stuff. And I've got tons of stories that I'll be telling over the videos about that. These are my 16 things. Communication, understanding, sustainable pace, responding to change, writing clean code, solving problems, building your own process, working with your customer, knowable metrics, real-time release, inspect and adapt, role definition, planning, collaboration, learning and feedback, and living in the real world. Agile is a lot. Agile is deep. Agile is not meeting in the morning and asking what you did yesterday and what you're going to do today. That's playground management. I want Agile to grow up. I want Agile to actually solve problems. I want Agile to care about quality before it cares about release dates. And that, I guess, is what makes me a heretic, but I'm hoping it also is what makes these videos useful.